So, I've sat in that chair and talked about stuff. I'm now looking at it direct this week. The Cup, Joseph, drugs, owners, John Knox, Southall, the new one. Plenty to talk about. The Cup, first of all. They were up for the Cup in Melbourne on Tuesday. And this was a really good performance by Twilight Payment, the winner.
Yes, it was. I think that the Australians must be getting increasingly peeved with the strength of our middle distance and upwards division, and possibly the weakness of theirs. You know, we always think of Australians, the sprinters being the métier in which they particularly excel. And apologies to Australian viewers if what I've said betrays an ignorance of Australian racing. It's
a traditional image in our minds.
That is the traditional image. For Joseph O'Brien, whom we will discuss shortly, an incredible achievement to win a second Melbourne Cup with Twilight Payment. Obviously, Prince of Arran again distinguished himself for Charlie Fellows, so it's becoming an even richer terrain for the Europeans to plunder. Obviously, we did lose Anthony van Dijk
and this is an important point of the whole story. There have been a number of fatalities in recent years, and if that was the Grand National at Aintree, the Grand National would be under big pressure. Officials at Aintree did something about it and made the jumps easier. One wonders what people in Melbourne are thinking.
Well, I suppose they might look at what Santa Anita have done this year. Last week we were discussing the improvements that had been made to the surface there, to the veterinary checks, etc. And they brought about, I think there were no fatalities on the track in the latest season at Santa Anita. So that work appears to have borne fruit. I'm sure that the organisers of the Melbourne Cup are looking at this. I think that's 7 in 8 years fatalities, which is an appalling figure, particularly for a flat race. It's an appalling figure in any case. But I'm sure they will look at that. Just one final word, and that is for maybe when connections go over there and a horse is withdrawn by the authorities, maybe in future to look at that and think, well, as much as it's a huge pain to take a horse over at considerable expense to train him or her for such a prestigious race, they are merely doing their job and trying to raise equine safety as high as it can go.
And Jai McNeil, the successful jockey on Twilight Payment. Right, second, Joseph does indeed refer to Joseph O'Brien. A second Melbourne Cup, classic success, Grade 1 success over jumps, 27 years old. Don't want to be sort of overly complimentary about him, but wow.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it's often said, if you follow social media on Twitter, which we know can be, you know, it's just a bin of hatred most of the time, isn't it? A sea of hatred. But it's often said about Joseph O'Brien by the moaners, well, look, he's had all this handed to him on a plate, he's Aidan O'Brien's son, etc., etc. Well, the answer to that is that there have been plenty of people over the years in all different sports who have been able to advance from square one quicker than might otherwise have been the case because of their family contacts. But the important thing we get to with 1 minute and 7 seconds remaining with Joseph O'Brien is what he's done in the 4 years and 5 months since he had his first runners. Group 1 winners on the flat, an Irish Derby winner, rekindling Twilight Payment on the flat, Iridessa, Thunder Moon. These are all Group 1 winners. Thunder Moon looks a very promising horse for next year, and of course over jumps too. Sir Eric, Le Richebourg. You know, yeah. This is not simply just someone who's been handed the keys to a golden opportunity. This is someone who's inherited his father's almost OCD for detail. Every every detail is explored.
And we almost forget he was a brilliant jockey prior to all of that.
I remember when a horse called Imperial Monarch ran in the Sandown Classic trial.
Right.
And as a young jockey, Joseph walking the track to see where the quickest rain-softened ground was. Even then, those looking at him walking round thought, this one is a chip off the old block.
And the instructions that he gave to Jai McNeill were absolutely sensational, weren't they? And it did just strike me the O'Briens, and he beat his dad again, so that added to the story. Did just strike me the O'Briens are always very generous towards their jockeys when successful, saying he or she rode a brilliant race, but that really was a brilliant ride by Jai McNeill to win on Twilight Payment, the first time a horse has made every yard of the running for nearly a quarter of a century.
Well, statistically, it's a hard trick to pull off, isn't it?
Absolutely. Right, next on the list is drugs. Now, this refers to, I feel, a slight awkwardness over, congratulations, Sheen Murphy, champion jockey in the UK, in Britain again, but there is a potential drugs offence hanging over him, and also over a Breeders' Cup winning trainer. So I just feel a tiny bit awkward.
Yeah, I mean, the Bob Baffert, who of course won the Breeders' Cup Classic again last night and is a Triple Crown winning trainer twice in the last decade. He put out a statement this week saying that he'd had a difficult year. There are 3 cases. There have been 3 cases of race day medication where I think they've probably overdone the doses. There is a case of a banned substance that is with Justify in the Santa Anita Derby of 2018, a substance called scopolamine. I hope I pronounced that correctly, veterinarians. I believe that is still pending, and that Justify may well lose that.
So am I right to feel a little bit awkward about things?
So. I think that John McCreary used to say this, the late and great John McCreary always used to say that with regard to drugs in equines, that if people don't believe what they see in horse racing, they will go elsewhere. That's what's happened with athletics and cycling. Athletics used to be it still is, of course, a huge event, but there are lots of doubters and naysayers. With regard to Sheen Murphy, I think that obviously this case is pending. I spoke to Sheen on Friday to write a piece about his defence this year as champion jockey. We discussed the case against him. He said that it's a slow-moving process, that he's waiting to hear from France Gallo as to when they're going to proceed.
And they
with
don't
that.
announce when they're going to make an announcement, do they? So it'll appear at some point.
It seems not, but I don't think. I think sometimes we're apt to shy away from this. In the case of Sheen Murphy, and in fact, being the sort of bloke he is, he's happy to discuss it. He won't be the first, he won't be the last. If his defence is unsuccessful, he would be looking at a ban. He knows that. Right,
next, John Knox. I was really struck by... Oh, no, sorry, I missed one out. Apologies. Sorry. And I've got it written in front of me. As Dave will testify, having sat next to me in many media centres for a long time, I'm not very good at reading. Owners is next on our list.
Yes, and the 1.2 million that's been spent on improving
this strategy,
the strategy to improve the lot of owners. This 1.2 million. What has been produced is a 27-page document or pamphlet. If we can work out the figures, it's £44,444.44 per page. There are 5 goals that have come out of it, which obviously is 240,000 a goal. This has attracted criticism, just simply because it's been said by some owners. I'm going to mention John Hughes and Jed Shields, who produced their own document, their own strategy on much less
very proactive,
much less money. They felt that racing
didn't cost them 1.2 million.
No, it didn't. They looked at shoring up minimum values of off-course packages for owners, the thorny subject of owners videoing their horses at the races, and the criticism of the ROA document is that it states it states goals and intentions, or a sort of mission statement almost, but for the 1.2 million quid, it doesn't really get to the nitty-gritty of how these are going to be achieved.
I think a slight feeling that if you'd been given the back of an envelope and scribbled a few ideas on them, they might not have been, you know, it does sound unkind to say it, but the thought that they might not have been very different.
I mean,
but prize money is the crucial thing. Some of the other things, well, you know, there are lots of aspirations.
Working on the desirability of ownership, the ownership experience, working with horse welfare and various commercial agreements. These are all laudable aims, but they are aims, and I think that what needs to be achieved is how do they go about achieving this. No one argues that owners have had to sit and suffer throughout the summer. Things have been very tough, but yes, the feeling from within the camp is that more could have been done.
But good news for owners this week that the restrictions that might have been tougher as a result of the lockdown in England have not turned out to be the case. Now, John Knox, I jumped the gun with John Knox. I was really struck with him being interviewed after his last run of this week, that he was busy thanking the interviewer and thanking everybody and being very John Knox.
Yeah, I mean, I think that, well, there are two aspects of this. The first, obviously, is to deal with John Knox's career as a trainer. 41 years in the sport, he's now 70. We could go back to the mid-90s, horses like Ridgewood Pearl, who won four Group 1 races in 4 different countries. Again, we're going back 25 years for a horse who won at the Breeders' Cup.
Yeah.
And then, of course, the likes of Sindar, the great See the Stars, of course, who won, 6 Group 1 races in 6 consecutive months.
Brilliantly handled that, yeah.
In 2009. These are all examples of a master trainer at his work. But I think the most important thing with John Knox, it's not Sindar, it's not Alam Shah, it's not Ridgewood Pearl, it's not even See the Stars. It's just the fact that throughout his career, the way that he conducted himself, the way that he behaved towards all those people that he had to deal with, is an absolute model for any human as to how to behave. Always
in racing and out of racing.
Absolutely. Taking victory with modesty, with grace, taking reverse and some reverses, particularly the split from the Aga Khan.
Absolutely.
Taking those with huge dignity. He was always an absolute pleasure to deal with. I dealt with him latterly over the Pro Cush and its place in racing, of which he's a huge supporter. And for all of us in the media, for all of us in the sport, a long and very happy retirement to John Knox, because his contribution, both in terms of the races that he's won, much more importantly, the person that he's been, has been immense.
And immense news that he's not going anywhere. He'll still be going racing when COVID allows. Right, we move on now to Southwell. And this is the news, I think slightly surprising, that jumping is returning at Southwell. I think there were plenty of people who thought the writing was perhaps on the wall after some welfare issues with jumping at Southwell.
Right, well, I don't wish to jump the gun in calling this a positive news story, because we'll obviously have to see what happens when jumping returns to Southwell next Friday on November the 13th. However, what we've discussed a few minutes ago, those races in which there is a spike in fatalities. We remember the Grand National before the modifications were made. They weren't universally popular, particularly with the old guard, if I can use that term. But in terms of equine welfare, there's been an improvement. We talked about Santa Anita's year and how work has been done. Now, 8 deaths there were between July, I sound like Yoda, between July the 30th and September the 3rd. Yeah. Now, that was a huge and very worrying spike in equine deaths at Southwell. The BHA course inspectors, they've looked at the possible reasons for that. Is it just an outlier? Is it a fluke? Or what's been happening? So there are 4 changes to the fences and also to the race programme. I think they've acted swiftly. I think they've acted. I believe they've acted in depth and in detail. They've come up with these changes. I think Charlie Longston was present at a schooling session and said he was very happy with how things had gone. And
quite boldly as well, because it wouldn't have been difficult to say, oh, these numbers are no good. Well, you know, money's tight at the moment anyway. We're not going to keep going.
Yeah, could have been belt and braces to say, right, there's no more jumping. But what I would perceive as the preferable option, look at this in depth, look at it in detail, come up with a solution. That's what they've done. I desperately hope that they get the reward that they deserve.
And ARC has also said this week that despite reports to the contrary, Worcester and Brighton racecourses will resume in 2021. Last on the list is the new one. We didn't actually have room to fit in one for Arthur as well. Significant news about both these horses. The new one, sadly, has died as a result of colic. A real favourite who got this big fan club and everything to like about the new one.
Yeah, I mean, emblematic of the appeal of jump racing, those horses who stick around for a few winters and they become huge favourites. The new one, a supremely talented horse, of course. Those of us who remember, who were there, the way that he sprinted up the hill to win the Ballymore Novices Hurdle in his first season over hurdles. He was then unlucky, wasn't he, the following year behind Jeski, wasn't it, when he was badly hampered by a fall at the third flight and in the end ran on to finish third. But he's been a hugely popular horse.
And the people around him, and they have been a crucial... I think I've got this thing about names of horses. You know, it's an attractive name. It was one that people could latch onto, and the people around, the owners were colourful. The trainer is quite colourful.
He is very colourful.
The Sam Twiston Davis.
Yeah.
It was a great combo.
Made all the more appealing by the people around him. As you say, the father and son combination of... the very likeably
Nigel
bonkers.
Getting really...
Yeah.
Oh, so you don't think he's going to win?
Absolutely, yeah. Very, very... almost chippy. Almost, Nigel. Not quite. So, yeah, we should salute him, and also one for Arthur.
Who's retired, one for Arthur. A hugely popular winner of the Grand National. First success for Scotland in the National for Lucinda Russell for the Golf Widows. The people around that horse, Derek Fox, etc., they were a really strong team as well.
Yeah, once again, accessible people who gave an awful lot to colour in the picture of one for Arthur. First winner for Scotland for a while.
Yeah, Rubstick, 79, wasn't it? Yeah. So, from the Melbourne Cup to one for Arthur, those were this week's talking points.
Subscribe to Racing TV to be notified when more Luck on Sunday videos are appearing online. And don't forget to join me for the show every Sunday morning from 9 o'clock with the best guests.